On this show, stock options for Apple engineers, Lossless goes big, bigger iPads, mobile file management, how often should you upgrade your Mac, and should Apple be your mobile carrier? I'm Mike Dave, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 1300 UTC, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring my bell. So, first story today, Apple gives engineers stock bonuses to keep them at the company. This has been reported by multiple outlets, mainly by Bloomberg, because let's be honest, that's where Gurmy is. And they are offering select engineers, obviously I think the higher performers, $50,000 to $120,000 in stock options, basically to avoid them moving over to Meta. Now, stock options, as far as I understand it, have a time frame where they vest. I'm not sure if that's the case with these. However, in a lot of cases, it means that you need to stay at the company for X number of years, and at that point, you get the option to buy those stock, like shares, at the price they were at the time you were given the options, which basically means right now, Apple's stock is around about $175, I think, a share, something like that. They're literally on the brink of the company being worth $3 trillion, which is bonkers. Bonkers seems to be my new word. We're going to keep it. And yeah, so basically the idea is that if these engineers stay at the company and don't move to another company in a couple of years, let's say 3 years, 5 years it could be, they will get the option to buy shares at the original price, the price they were at the time of these options. So if the price of the options now is at $175 and the stock is already worth $225, let's say, by the time that the options vest when they're allowed to buy them, then that is they basically get the extra $50 a share completely free. So if they've got 100 shares, they get an extra $5,000, $50,000, whatever it is. I'm terrible at maths, but that's the idea. So this is a pretty good incentive for these engineers to stay at Apple. Obviously, we have a chip shortage right now. We also apparently have a expertise shortage, which is why these engineers are in such demand. That's why things like DataCamp that we had as a sponsor recently are actually a really good deal, definitely worth checking out. This is not sponsored by DataCamp, but just saying, probably worth picking up some new skills when there's a massive demand for software engineers and data engineers and all that kind of stuff. Next up, Apple has brought Lossless to their whole music catalogue. Apple's aim with Lossless and their spatial audio stuff was to bring Lossless, at least, to their entire music catalogue by the end of the year. Yesterday was the 28th, that's when they hit it. So basically, everything in Apple's catalogue now for Apple Music, you can listen to in Lossless. Not over your AirPods, obviously, not even on your AirPods Max with a wire. But, you know, if you've got a HomePod, then you can listen to Lossless. If you've got a HomePod Mini, you can listen to Lossless. I'm not sure how much better it's going to sound, but I might try that out. I haven't even had my HomePod Mini plugged in for a little while, because there's nowhere in the house that I listen to music other than at my Mac, and that's already got the sound sticks attached to it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a really cool thing that it's all there. It would be great for spatial to come to everything, because I've got to say, I love listening to spatial audio on my AirPods 3. We've used the AirPods 3 as my microphone for a couple of videos just recently, and they sound astonishing on the microphones. I think everyone's kind of agreed. Some people said it sounds better than when I'm in here. That's a bit disappointing. This seems like a lot of effort to go to. But yeah, spatial audio, Hamilton soundtrack is the one that I really notice it the most with. It does add what feels like a slight echo. It feels like you're actually in a room with these people singing to you, which is great. And when you move your head, you can literally... It really pins everything in one space. So I got to say, I'm a big fan of spatial audio. We've got a few questions come in on iCave Answers today. I haven't actually told anyone what to do. If you want to get a question on the show for a little while, use hashtag iCave Answers down in the comments section. I answer pretty much all of them. Occasionally, we get overwhelmed and we have to do an extra show. That's not a bad problem for me to have. Although I am super busy right now getting this new cafe and everything ready to open at the theatre, but I'm still going to make sure I make the videos for you, even if we have to do it in weird places sometimes. But the first question today comes from Tony Ward. He asks, iCave Answers, what are the chances the new M2 iPad Pro 2022 will get a bigger screen? I had the original iPad Pro with the large screen, but bought the 2018 iPad Pro with the smaller screen, which was a mistake. I then bought the 2020 iPad Pro with the larger display, which is great. A bigger screen would be a compelling reason to buy the M2 iPad Pro. Most of the time, the iPad Pro sits on the keyboard stand, so size in the hands is not a worry. Laptops go up to 16 inches plus, so why not an iPad? The touch interface is great. And yeah, there's been quite a few people that have been asking me, why are we not getting bigger iPads? Why are we not getting bigger iPads? There's a few reasons that I can see. This is not to say it's ruled out by any means. I don't get to make many decisions at Apple. But the first one for me is that in the hands experience, because it's an iPad and the idea is that you use it in your hands. The keyboard and trackpad thing, I guess, should be secondary. Otherwise, you might as well get a MacBook and stick a touchscreen on it. I'm still not a big fan of a touchscreen Mac idea. However, I do enjoy using my iPad, but when I'm using it with a keyboard, I would prefer to use it with a trackpad. That makes sense. It's just not as comfortable to keep picking your hand up and poking the screen when you're at the keyboard, for me. So I'm using a very cheap keyboard with mine at the moment, hence the slight discomfort. I am looking for a keyboard and trackpad case for it, so if you've got any suggestions for the 10.9-inch iPad Air, do let me know down in the comments. The other big issues is the bigger you go with an iPad, the more kind of worry of flex you've got. There is a lot more structural rigidity to a MacBook, for example. You've got all of that keyboard underneath that folds down. The display is obviously the most fragile part, and that is protected as well in the clamshell design, not so much with the iPad. So I would say that that's probably part of the issue. I would love Apple to bring maybe touchscreen to these new displays that they're doing. That would be great, especially if they're going to be compatible with iPads and with MacBooks, so you could actually interact with your second display running off the iPad's M1 or M2. That would probably be a pretty good experience as well. I don't know. I don't see 16-inch iPads coming. I mean, maybe a little bit bigger. Maybe we could go up to a 14-inch. That would probably be more reasonable. I don't know. Maybe they could do it, but there's been no reports of it as yet. Next up, Team Kinetics asks, iCave answers, can you recommend a better file management system for iPad Pro? Is it possible to use Finder instead of Files? If so, how? I'm really sorry, Team Kinetics. I have a feeling there aren't any better file management systems at the moment for the iPad. I would love to see them bring Finder to it. It seems like a natural progression now that we've got everything running on the same architecture, all on the same chips. It shouldn't be a massive issue. I'm not sure how well it would work when you've not got floating windows, but I mean, you could definitely have side-by-side windows for dragging stuff between one and the other. Finder, Apple, bring it to the iPad. I don't know why it's not there already. I don't know why they decided to make Files instead of Finder in the first place, to be completely honest with you. Eugene King asks, iCave Dave, how often should I update my Mac? My current one is a late 2012 Mini, which is overdue. Yes, it is. If I get an M1 Mini this year or early next year, when should I upgrade? Have a great 2022. So I would say right now, unless you can get hold of a used M1 Mini, $500-ish, I would say hold on, because I do think that we're going to be getting an M1 Pro option or an M2 option in the first half of 2022. But that being said, I don't think they're going to drop a lot of value on the M1 versions unless Apple keeps it around at a lower price point, in which case you'll probably be around about that $500 mark anyway. But in terms of how often to upgrade, I think as long as you've still got major version software support, like I kept my 2013 iMac until it wouldn't update anymore. So I was using that on Catalina until I got my Mac Mini with Apple Silicon. And I think that's about right. It still performed pretty well for what I needed it to do. Still ran Final Cut absolutely fine for 1080p. And let's be honest, I'm just telling you the news. You don't need to see me in any more detail than this. But other than that, I would just say when your system is becoming frustrating, that's a good time to upgrade. There's two kind of paths, actually. You can either go that way, where you kind of squeeze as much life out of every system as you possibly can, or you can go down the other route, which is that you upgrade often and resell your previous version. So, for example, if I was to keep using this M1 until M2 comes out, then replace it with an M2 and sell my M1, I'm probably not going to drop a lot of value. And that makes it a reasonable kind of upgrade path. If you keep it for a few years, then I don't think you're getting as much extra value out of it. If you keep it until it dies, then, you know, if I was to keep this M1 Mac Mini for 6 years, it's cost me about $100 a year to have a Mac. That's a pretty good deal. That's my thoughts. Either keep it and run it into the ground as soon as it stops being useful to you, upgrade, or upgrade annually, or as soon as they release a new one, resell your previous one, and your delta for having the latest system is probably going to be a couple of $100. Don't think that's too bad either. Evan Rogers asks, iCave answers, in many countries, MVNOs, mobile virtual network operators, are quite popular budget options that allow consumers to still experience the newest technologies provided by the traditional mobile network carriers, Verizon, O2, etc., at a discounted or prepaid rate. What would you think of an Apple-branded MVNO cellular network for iPhone? What would pricing and speeds, data caps, perks, etc. have to look like for consumers to switch? Now, my opinion on this has changed from when I first read your question to now, weirdly, quite quickly. So I would say, initially, I thought this is a terrible idea, because what does Apple bring to the table by doing it? And also the biggest concern would be that it would be very much like Apple Card, where you basically have it in the US and nowhere else. And Apple services kind of need to be international for them to work, in my head. However, it would be a lot like Apple Card, where basically everything is run by whoever it is that runs, I don't know all the American banks, but whoever it is that runs Apple Card, they basically take care of everything. Apple puts a front end on it, gives you really nice, easy controls on it, makes everything nice and visible so that you can see what your costs are involved with it. And I think Apple could do a really good job of that side of thing if they were to do a virtual network, a virtual cell provider. And they could potentially partner with different networks around the world and maybe offer international roaming at much easier ways, having all of these deals already in place so that you don't have any changes between international roaming. And there's certain things, especially in the EU, we used to have a lot of protection for that until my country decided to fall out of the EU by doing Brexit, which was a silly idea, and now we have to pay for roaming again, which is bad. In terms of data caps, don't know what that is. We don't really have that in the UK. I have completely unlimited data, unlimited tethering, all that kind of stuff on my plan. I know there are some plans that have limited data. They're not as common over here as they are in the States. There's a lot of unlimited plans over here. So I think data caps, like, Apple should just make it unlimited. If they're going to do it, just go full on, or just don't bother. And Apple, because they would presumably charge some sort of a premium for this, I think going all you can eat data, all you can eat calls, and just maybe piggybacking the calls onto FaceTime audio so that you get better call quality, things like that might be the best way to go about it. But it's a really interesting option. I think the other way that they could go is doing something along the lines of a Starlink, maybe partnering with Elon to use Starlink as a mobile network. I don't know if that's feasible, how small you can get the antennas for that in the future. But that would be a really compelling option too, where you never run out of signal. We heard about like satellite iPhones just before the 13 came out. That was super accurate. And that's it for today's show, guys. I'm going to be editing this differently. I'm not going to be editing on the Mac today. I've got to head out again to work, so I'm going to edit on the iPad, so it will look a little bit different, but hopefully not a massive change. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.